All right. Are you ready to talk PlayStation now?
You know I am. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. All right. Well, so the question, the core talking point for PlayStation, they've been doing great, in my opinion. They've stumbled a bit this year in regards to how they rolled out their new PlayStation Plus service with the extra and the premium and all. Kind of stumbled a bit with how they rolled that out. They definitely stumbled in regards to PlayStation Premium getting at any actual classic games and at all. Um, but I think for the most part, this year has been pretty solid for them. You had Horizon come out, you had Gran Turismo 7, you had God of War Ragnarok come out. Three great games there. I know Gran Turismo had some microtransaction kind of controversy and always online controversy, but for the most part, games wise, did a solid job. They also had Stray as like a first party, not first party game, but like a marketing and all like that for Stray and all like that. So they had they did pretty good games wise. Um, Communication wise, Jim Ryan was putting his foot in his mouth a lot this year. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
but like saying, "Oh yeah, difference of opinions, just respect opinions and all like that." Now let me talk about my cats and stuff. It's just like, sir, what are you doing here? What are you doing here?
Down
Um,
here giving a bad look for cat people.
yeah, he's like Tyler. Like, how did you feel as a cat person when you read him saying that?
I was like, fuck off, Jim Ryan. That's how I felt. Get out of here. Um, God, yeah. It's funny because it does remind me, keeping up the sports analogy, of like I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and oh my God, it just they draft well, and they have players save their ass because they have very smart GMs, but God, in some ways, they're just the most antiquated franchise of all time. And that's how I feel about Sony. Like they're so bad at the online stuff about like making smart, intuitive moves to just expand and like be forward thinking. But damn if they don't like their version of drafting well, damn if they don't make just insane quality games. Like they're just
Right.
it's about fostering that culture for 2 decades now. Just like we got all these studios, we know how to build out and flesh out studios, and we know what people want. Like we know what well, at least as far as like the just acclaim worthy third person, these just very
Story and narrative
buzzworthy,
heaven.
newsworthy games that, are
Yeah.
critically acclaimed.
Yeah. They absolutely knocked it out the park in that regard. Um, but now the question really is, I feel like, and I saw someone, I think it might have been Imran Khan on Twitter, um, say something along the lines of, feels like we're now about to enter the second wave of PlayStation exclusives, and it's really like the first wave of PlayStation 5 only exclusives. Um, which I was like,
Really.
that's a really good point. I'm very happy about that. Now that
Kind of
we're
funny's
kind of
also been like Greg Miller and everybody on PS I Love You has been referring to it as like the wave two. Like that they
yeah,
think Ragnarok is the conclusion of or not wave two, phase two.
yeah,
And that this is like, their MCU phase one done now.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, it does feel like this is a definitive cutoff point. Boom, now we go to the next slate.
Right. So now it's like, okay, what do you got in the bag for us? What do you have in store for us? Because really, aside from Spider-Man 2 next year and
And
PSVR
Wolverine.
2, well, and PSVR 2, I'm talking about next year specifically. Uh,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and we're like Spider-Man 2, PSVR 2, we know nothing about what Sony has in the future for us. We don't know if they have any other first party games coming next year. We don't know what many of their studios are working on aside from Naughty Dog. We know that they're working on a Last of Us multiplayer thing. They have another project in the works. Like we know that all these teams are working, but we know nothing about what most of them are working on. So I guess the
Yeah.
core
And
talking point for this is really like what's next for them what's next for Sony in 2023? Like what are they going to show us next year? What do you think we're going to see?
I think they will show us a decent amount. But we were talking about yesterday what's actually going to get released, and I wouldn't be surprised if first party wise, excuse me, all we get is Spider-Man 2. Like I think at the end of the day, that might be enough. You just chalk it up to like a development year essentially. And like I said, the MVP coming through. If Insomniac doesn't deliver, maybe it's like, oh, maybe if Xbox is able to hit their year, it changes the narratives. But I think just if you close out hot with an absolute heater in Spider-Man 2 and it's selling just buku copies, like absolutely, you can see you could see just people being like, yep, Sony is business as usual. And then you move on to 2024, where I assume we're going to get just a lot of this. We'll probably get a lot more of that slate too.
Yeah, from their quote unquote phase two of titles that
Yeah.
they're working on.
Like Ghost of Tsushima, like some of these, it's like, oh, what are they working on? Sucker Punch, they're working on Ghost of Tsushima too.
Right, like you can theoretically guess it. Like you said, Sucker Punch, Ghost of Tsushima 2, Haven. We know they're working on some type of online game. I believe it is.
I
We
think
don't.
so. Yeah, I'll be honest. Haven, Firewalk, Deviation, and Pixel Opus, because you've got a list of their studios here. No idea.
Yeah,
Even Bend, it's like, what the hell are they working on? They were brought in as the B team for Last of Us Part 1 and like, or as like a co-team. I don't want to say B team in disrespect in there, but yeah. And then like Naughty Dog, is it because like they all really working on factions? I don't know. Is
well, that's the
there
thing. Like we know that there's something else. Like Neil Druckmann, when they announced Last of Us Part One, and they also announced the multiplayer, Neil Druckmann said, "Yeah, I'm also working on another game as well." So it's like, okay, what is that game? Is that Last of Us Part Three, or is it a new IP? From Sucker Punch. I mean, not Sucker Punch, from Naughty Dog.
you know me, obviously, Team Sobi. Can't wait for. I assume it's another Astro game.
Right, you would imagine.
And is that's the interesting part? Is that VR2? Are they using it to push it, or with this? Like, I assume the success and everybody, like, just the general well received acclaim of Astro's Playroom. If that now just becomes a full fledged first party game, that's like not hampered by VR. That'll be interesting. I think the big one is Blue Point, because that
That
could
is a big one.
maybe be 2023.
It could be. It is really like, okay, are they doing another remake or are they doing their own IP? Like it's the giant question mark
I mean, we
over
all want Metal Gear Solid, so we all hope they're doing a remake.
right. Everyone hopes that. Um, but yeah, like that's the thing. Like with so many of PlayStation Studios here, it's just like a giant question mark. Where like, again, you can figure and guess what some of them are doing, but most of them, it's like we don't know. We know that there's something is going on. We've heard like tiny details, but we still know nothing about it. So I think that next year is the year where we hear about a majority of these projects, especially since this year there wasn't even a PlayStation showcase. Like normally they would have had one in September, and they did not do that at all this year, just completely skipped. And I saw
Yeah,
people online say, oh, maybe they didn't do one because they don't want to make their platform seem too strong with the current, Activision Blizzard acquisition going on and everything like that, and like tip the scales in Microsoft's favor at all. Which I mean, like, I feel like it's an argument that I can understand. I could totally see that actually be like being some of PlayStation's reasoning, being like, you know what, we're like okay, guys, we're top tier. If we show too much that we're going to be top tier for the next 3-4 years, Microsoft's definitely going to get this. So let's maybe not show that we're going to be too top tier.
yeah. I don't think that's. I think those people are getting a little too deep down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole there. I think Sony just doesn't like doing this shit, and so like with the lack of E3 being like this is a necessity, I think it's just kind of like, hey, we can pick and choose when we want to show up and show you guys things.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that next year for Sony, in terms of their first party studios, we're going to be seeing a lot of what they're doing. I think we will find out a majority of this list of what they're working on. Maybe not all at once, but I think by the end of the year, we will have an idea or know more so, like be more solid in terms of our knowledge of each of their projects.
To speak to how they survived that year, I mean, like everybody will live, obviously, if there were no Sony exclusives, but on top of Spider-Man, you have Final Fantasy 16 exclusivity midway through the year, which is important to a lot of people. You have is PS4 remake, or is RE4 remake, is that also exclusive, or is that
it's PS5 and PS4, but only Series X and S for Xbox?
Okay, gotcha. All right. I wasn't sure. Because I feel like I remember the rumors. What about Silent Hill? Because like, do they have that one?
I think that's PS5 only.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we definitely assume that, I mean, or not assume, but we know Final Fantasy is coming out. If you also have Silent Hill, like your third parties do do a lot of heavy lifting for you. All you need is Spider-Man. You know what I mean? If you have 3 big games, I mean, it's a slightly down year, but like that's still, you're putting out bangers and people associate that with the Sony brand. That's good enough. And then you roll that over to probably 2024, where you have more actual first party stuff to show.
Yeah, and I guess that there's also to take into account indies, because like indies, they're smaller
Yeah,
game,
not
like they could
Wayfinder, but
be
Viewfinder.
viewfinder.
We just talked about that. That's PS5 only.
Yeah, and like indies, they can come along and like be big things. Like Seafood, when that came out, that was PlayStation only, and that was like big for the platform. Stray was arguably the biggest indie on the platform. Who knows if we're gonna get another Kana game? If we get another Kana game announcement next year, like that'd be big for the platform and all like that. So indies will definitely come through, and third parties will definitely come through to help make 2023, even though it's a down year for first party, still a solid year for PlayStation overall. And then there's the other thing we haven't really talked about. Kind of touched on it here and there, but also PSVR 2. PSVR 2 comes out February 22nd. And obviously, they're going to be, well, you would imagine they'd be putting a lot of focus and marketing on PSVR 2, trying to show people why you need to buy in, why you should get this. And, I imagine that's going to be a big focus for them for the first couple months of 2023, from obviously like January up to April, I would imagine.
Say that, but yeah, man, it just certainly doesn't seem like they give a shit about it, right? Like, I don't know. The Sony has this weird thing where they just, and I think it's being a little more insular, it feels like, and I guess it not being as like, oh, forward thinking, but it's just like they're fine sometimes just throwing money into like things that I like. It's weird because we know they don't actually, like, any of these companies actually care about like gamers or any of like they're not like, oh, here's one for you guys. But at times it certainly feels that way when it's just like they walked the Vita out to essentially death. You know what I mean? They walked
Mm-hmm.
PSVR 1 out to like, I mean, it was PSVR or
It
PSVR
treaded
1, I think, was
water.
more successful than they anticipated a little bit, but I still don't know if it was some huge net gain for them. And this certainly feels like the VR is equivalent to Vita, right? I'm getting those vibes as we get closer. It's just like,
I think people are worried about that. People are worried that VR2 will go the way of the Vita. And I maybe this is me having blind faith or blind optimism. But like I hope that Sony is not kind of having that mentality. I feel like Sony wouldn't be doing a PSVR 2 if they didn't think that there was worth behind it. If they didn't think that there was some sort of value to it. I mean, PSVR 1 was, for all intents and purposes, a test run in a sense. And they saw that, hey, they knew they had, I guess you could say, reasonable profit margins on it for success and everything. And they were like, okay, this is successful given that it's like a hamstring setup and all like that. And given that VR is niche, we think that there's still more potential here. We think that there's something worth doing here that's could provide value to us, but also to players on console who want to do more VR stuff. So that's why they're making this so high tech and everything. And I would like to believe that they really want to make this thing successful.
those
They
are
really care about it.
those are all literal talking points you could have made about the Vita. It wasn't like the Vita was marched out there with terrible tech. It wasn't like it was marched out there, like with, it wasn't like didn't have a test run before with the PSP. Like, I think it's weird. I don't think sometimes you can explain their business decisions. It does come across as Nintendo-esque at times. Yeah, like I would just say, again, like the way I defer to Microsoft with like, we can only go off of what they've shown. I don't think Sony deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to weird side things that like, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with just putting something out, trying it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But like, yeah, I think we've only seen that from their weird side business ventures with the PSP and PS Vita that they are willing to just kind of throw something out and like not actually fully have its back, despite some, kind of half-ass attempts. And I think it's trending towards that. Like, I'll just be real. I think this might be the last PSVR we ever get.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, the way I look at PSVR just as a brand, whether it be this one or the last one, I look at it as like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So like they know that it's not gonna just like sell gangbusters right out the gate. Like it's gonna take time to build up an audience, build up a sizable audience, and that they'll need to work to get good games on it from third party and first party. Um, I think they're aware of this, and that's why they have Fire Sprite working alongside Gorilla to make a Horizon game. That way, it's not solely on Gorilla to figure it out. Like you don't have to pull your entire first party team over to making a VR game. Like you could have some of them work alongside a different studio to make a VR game, unless Team Asobi wants to straight up make a whole VR game. Like they're more than welcome to do it, and I know you'd be very happy if you saw them make Astrobot Rescue Mission 2 in PSVR 2. You'd probably be really happy
Oh
about that.
no, I actually don't. As amazing as I think Astrobot is, I don't want to see that franchise die with VR. So please, dear God, just I really want it to just be a 3D platform. If I'm being real.
I mean, that's totally fine too. I mean, I think I say it'd be awesome if it was on PSVR 2 because it'd be great for PSVR 2. But I would prefer if it was not because I don't see myself getting PSVR 2 for a while. And that would allow Astrobot, to really thrive and get, bigger, more wider appeal, especially after Playroom. And, I would assume most PS5 owners played Playroom at least a bit. So, like, hey, actually, this is pretty cool. It's pretty cool here. Um,
Yeah.
the final thing I just want to talk about PlayStation, I forgot to put it here, but just briefly. Mobile. What do you think they're gonna do with mobile next year? Because they're trying to they've acquired a studio for mobile. I think it's Savage Game Studios is who they've acquired for their mobile ventures now.
I that's one I feel like I have no feel for. So I wouldn't even be able to say really.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine if you didn't have an answer. I don't know if I have many thoughts on it either. Aside from just it's gonna be interesting to see what you all do. It's gonna be interesting to see the direction you all go with mobile. You're trying to expand into it, so I imagine in regards to mobile next year, it's gonna be more so just laying groundwork for more for the actual grand reveal onto mobile in like 2024, 2025. I imagine that's why I see things going
Yeah.
for PlayStation.